Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Hello, sir. Now, it seems a ton of details have come out about Far Cry 6. Almost definitely these were meant for Sunday for the Ubisoft Forward event. When Ubisoft always get the worst of it. Every time they try and put an E3 showcase together or anything regarding some sort of announcement, there's always a ton of people that come along and go, hey, this is all the stuff that you were going to show in a couple of days, and let's just talk about it now. So the main thing with this is Far Cry 6. A ton of gameplay details, a ton of things about the environment. We've got Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul as the main villain. Almost at the main event there. He's definitely the main event. Also, this is the second time we've done this news. We tried to do it before, but we focused on something that was still being translated. Now, some of the names in that translation I prefer to what they're actually going to go with, but we'll have to wait and see. The main first thing is the release date. This is down for February the 18th, 2021, which reminds me of Far Cry New Dawn dropping at the beginning of the year. And I guess they don't usually go for the start of the year, or at least that doesn't seem to stick out to me. The new location is Yara, which is listed as a tropical paradise, a mix of jungle, beach, and the capital city itself. They say it's the biggest Far Cry yet. And I like the idea of them doing like a Just Cause style thing where you've got this massive tropical island, but occasionally, big spikes of metropolitan cities in the middle, maybe chases or gunplay or whatever can go from one thing to the next. Where do you come down, or what do you like about what do you think about the idea of a Far Cry set in a city?
Big fan, Scott, because I don't think we've really seen that before. In the past few games, we've had kind of towns, we've had more pronounced urban areas, but nothing kind of like a huge city like you would expect from, like you said, Just Cause or something. So it feels like they're trying to give fans kind of like what we want, because I feel like when we think about Far Cry, I think the first thing we do think about is those tropical kind of like environments. You know what I mean? You go back to even the originals, and then obviously into Far Cry kind of like 3 and stuff, and you have these kind of like lush beaches, these lush jungles and stuff like that. But to balance that with something that we haven't really seen, which is, like I said, a more dense urban environment, I can dig it. I'm here for that. And that's kind of like the Far Cry that I want personally, because that's, like I said, what immediately kind of comes to mind. And the way that they can, like you said there, kind of build upon it in the biggest sandbox they've created for the series or whatever, has a lot of potential, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it reminds me of like the old school Far Cry, which is the one box that I wanted them to tick. Like, I want them to go back to Far Cry Instinct style, give me the sweatiest jungles imaginable, and pair that off with, sort of clean, pristine cities and things like that. So let's get into some story stuff. Giancarlo Esposito, you'll know him from Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. Totally recommend Better Call Saul, and especially his performance in it is this brilliantly chilling sort of, he never loses his cool. And, even when he's dying in Better Call Saul, he's like half blown apart with his face hanging off, but he's still pretty cool. I think they've pretty much cast him to just be that dude, to just pretty much be Gus Fring in Far Cry, as evidenced by the artwork they've put out. So he's playing Anton Castillo. The name on the Hong Kong translation was Anton Castillaru, which I totally prefer, to be fair. I think that's a way more flavorful name. But yeah, he's playing Anton Castillo. He's this sort of dictatorial ruler of Yara. He wants his son to take over from him. His son's called Diego. And apparently at that point, when he appoints his son, rather than assumedly going down some other sort of electoral process, it sparks a revolution, and you play as this guy called Danny Rojas, which is another fantastic name. And you play this member of this guerrilla group that's sort of trying to overthrow the government or fight back against this dictatorship that's overthrowing everyone else. So yeah, what do you think of the general setup and the use of Mr. Gus Fring, Mr. Esposito?
I mean, we talked about this in the other video when we were discussing whether or not he would be cast in this game and how we would like to see him used as a villain. But old Giancarlo is such a fantastic actor. Everything I've seen him in, but especially, like you said, Better Call Saul, like the way he plays a kind of younger Gus Fring in that, a kind of more emotionally volatile, which for Gus Fring is still very reserved and very subtle, I suppose, is great. And he has such a kind of epic screen presence. Like, he doesn't have to do much, but you get the threat that kind of emanates from him. And to bring that over to a Far Cry game would be awesome. I feel like the way they're going down the kind of revolutionary route reminds me a lot of Far Cry 4 especially. And I do kind of want to see them delve into the nuances of each side a bit more. Obviously, he's playing this dictator, and I think the description even said that his child might follow in the blood-stained kind of path that he's led. Yeah. So it's obvious that he's not going to be a good dude, but I think what kind of Far Cry 4 did well with Pagan Min. Pagan Min obviously wasn't a good dude, but they did a great job of kind of contrasting his ideology with that of kind of like the rebels and stuff, and kind of going into the nuances of each. And it wasn't just a very basic kind of good guy versus bad guy situation, which I think you can get quite easily from this setup. So if they use kind of Giancarlo's talents to create a more nuanced villain who is very much a bad dude, but you can kind of see elements of humanity left in there, I think that would be the way I want to go. You know, we talked about, are you going to just get him in to do the Gus Fring thing? You know what I mean? And that would be awesome, but you can't have the Gus Fring thing without kind of that complexity, you know what I mean? Gus Fring wasn't just this kind of stoic bad guy. He had a bunch going on in his past, a bunch going on in terms of motivations and stuff. And I want to see that tension kind of make its way across to this game, to make that relationship between this dude and this freedom fighter you're playing as kind of more pronounced, and probably closer to the relationship that you had with Vas or Pagan Min rather than Joseph Seed. Because even though I do quite like Joseph Seed, in fact I quite have him as a fashion inspiration at the moment. I feel like, you know, he wasn't that complex.
Well, my thing with Far Cry is that for the longest time, you know, we always sort of point to that, the franchise now, ever since Vas, it always felt like they were trying to, that was their mold now. It's like, we need a wacky villain, and we're just going to have someone who sort of, you know, they kill their own people in the opening cutscene, and they're really serious because they just discard human life. And it's like, you know, they've played that card a couple of times now, and I really like Pagan Min. I like the way that Troy Baker plays him. I quite like that there's the whole secret ending thing at the beginning. If you just sort of let him be your friend, he'll let you just scatter the ashes of your parents or whatever. That's why you're there in the first place. And he kind of has that side to him that's a little bit more honorable, even though he is this full-on disconnected psychopath. And then for Joseph Seed, I thought they went a bit too cartoony. So I don't think they would cast someone like Esposito. I don't even think he would choose the script if it wasn't something more in-depth, if he wasn't getting more cutscene time or whatever. Could totally be wrong. It could be another John Bernthal situation where he's mostly just kind of wasted and it's more the face for the marketing. But I would hope there's more to that character. So yeah, apparently, you play as Danny Rojas, you have all the access to the guerrilla groups and everything. The new Fangs for Hire group, which is, I didn't realize how much Far Cry has adopted, just started using Fangs for Hire as their name for any faction you can recruit. That group now is called the Amigos, which isn't as cool as Anton Castillo and Danny Rojas, but you've got the Amigos that you can bring in on missions, or you can hire them out in the open world.
It works. I mean, I love the idea when it comes to, you know, Far Cry's open world, that it is kind of responsive to what you do in the kind of allies or impromptu allies that you can make, you know what I mean? Like a big part of the fun in Far Cry 4 especially was kind of freeing those wild animals or riding an elephant into town and doing crazy stuff like that. So I always like the additive kind of abilities that you have, because you have a reliance on your own kind of fists and your own wits and your own weapons and your bow and sneaking around and pulling off these mad moves. But being able to manipulate the environment, play these enemies off each other, off nature, off the other factions in the game, I think that it's kind of like a standard Far Cry staple, but I'm pleased to see it back, and hopefully they can expand upon it in juicy ways.
I imagine that Maximum Juice will be coming. Speaking of cool juice, apparently if you buy the game on PS4, you get the free update to the PS5 one, which is kind of one of the first times we've seen a mass publisher not, because Xbox are mandating this for the Series X. If you buy something on Xbox One, it has to have the smart delivery upgrade to go onto the Xbox Series X. And it feels like, or it looks like Ubisoft are just taking that on board. And maybe that's just going to be a mandate for the next generation. You know, I mean, there's the whole thing on the other side with 2K saying that if you want, you know, the NBA on NBA 2K21 on PS5 or Xbox Series X, you have to pay the additional £10/$10. Whereas on Ubisoft's side, if they're leading with Far Cry 6, it seems that if you buy it on current gen, you automatically get the upgrade, which is one hell of a nice consumer move, but I don't trust them to not do something else in return.
Well, that's the thing, man. Like, you've got I think we're going to have a bunch of different kind of approaches to this coming out, especially early on. You know, we've got Xbox with their smart delivery system, which by all accounts sounds really kind of good and promising. Now we've got Ubisoft doing this, but then you do have kind of like your 2Ks seeing how far they can push it, and hopefully if a lot of people get on the pro-consumer bandwagon and start giving you these kind of free upgrade paths from last gen to next gen, everyone else will give it to peer pressure. And you know, I'm not a huge fan of peer pressure, but perhaps when it comes to corporations doing nice things, maybe it works, maybe it's good.
Pressure away.
When it comes to yeah, when it comes to this game especially, I mean, it's not coming out until February, so the new machines will be out by then. So I wonder I suppose that's just future-proofing it for people who aren't early adopters, who will get the game, in February, maybe won't get one of the new consoles until next holiday season, and then they'll have something to play then, which is always a good thing, because the worst part about buying a new console is not being able to afford many games to play it on. I remember when I got the PlayStation 4, I think I played Battlefield 4 non-stop. It was the only game I had. It was that in this kind of knack for a long time. So the fact that you can bring all of these other games over free of charge, and presumably they will have a few more bells and whistles on top, is a good move, and I'm pleased that it's not just the smart delivery thing that's doing that.
I think, yeah, and like you said, it keeps the pressure up on the likes of EA, Activision, 2K, the ones that are going to hold out the longest, because they're going to want to maintain the individual unit cost per game on the next generation. They're not going to want to give those things away. So yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below of the potential environment mixing of beaches, jungles, and the main city. You've got Antoine Castillo, Giancarlo Esposito taking over the role. Yeah, what's your general thoughts on Far Cry 6? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.
What a delay.
What a delay.